When you hear the word emperor, maybe you think of someone old, powerful, and wise. But Qin Shi Huang was just a boy, only 13 years old. He did not have a crown yet. He did not sit on a golden throne. He had no army of his own. But deep inside, he had a dream, a big dream. He didn't want to rule just one part of China. He wanted to unite it, all of it. At that time, China was not one country. It was many small kingdoms. They fought each other every day. People lived in fear. Fathers left home for war. Mothers cried in silence. Children asked, "When will peace come?" Qin Shi Huang looked at this broken land, and he said, "I will stop the fighting. I will bring peace." But can a child do that? Let's go back. Let's meet the boy who wanted to change everything. A long time ago, China was not one big country. It was broken into 7 parts. Each part had its own king. These kings did not like each other. They all wanted more land, more power, more gold. So they fought. Day after day, year after year. War never stopped. The people were tired. Farmers could not grow food in peace. Children could not go to school. Families moved from place to place to stay safe. Many people lost their homes. Some lost their lives. It was a hard time. People asked, when will this end? One of the biggest kingdoms was Qin. It was strong and rich, but it had enemies on all sides. The people of Qin worked hard. They built roads, farms, and weapons. They wanted to protect their land. Inside the capital, the king's palace stood tall. But even with strong walls, fear lived in every heart. Every family knew someone who had gone to war. Every morning, people waited for bad news. This was the world where Qin Shi Huang was born. He did not grow up with games or songs. He grew up with maps, war plans, and books about power. While other children learned how to write poems, he learned how to rule. His teachers told him, "If you want peace, you must be strong." But even they did not know what this boy would one day become. One cold evening, a fire burned in the mountains. Soldiers rode past the village. A small boy stood at the gate and watched them go. That boy was Qin Shi Huang. He looked at the sky, full of smoke and fear, and thought, "I don't want this forever." That night, he went back to his room and looked at a map of China. He saw the lines, the borders, the many names. He whispered to himself, "One day, I will make this one." It was just a whisper, but it was also a promise, and it was only the beginning. When Qin Shi Huang was only 13 years old, his father, the king of Qin, died. At that moment, he became king, but he was not ready. He was still a boy. He liked books more than swords. He liked quiet more than war. And now he had to rule a kingdom. Everyone in the palace looked at him. Some smiled, some whispered, some laughed behind his back. "He is too young," they said. "He cannot lead, he cannot fight. He is just a child." But Qin Shi Huang said nothing. He watched, he listened, he waited. Behind him stood a powerful man, the Prime Minister, Liu Buwei. Many people believed Liu Buwei was the one who truly held power. He made big decisions. He gave orders. He spoke for the young king. Some even said he helped the king's mother control the palace. Qin Shi Huang knew this, and deep down, he did not like it. He wanted to be more than a boy on the throne. He wanted to be king in truth, not just in name. He spent his days learning. He read about old kings, strong armies, smart plans. He asked questions. He walked through the palace halls in silence. He remembered every name, every face. People thought he was quiet because he was weak. But he was not weak. He was watching. At night, He often sat alone in his room. He looked at his father's chair. It was big, too big for him. His feet didn't touch the floor. But still, he sat there and imagined a day when no one would laugh at him, when no one would control him, when he would speak, and all would listen. One morning, he stood before the royal court. His voice was calm. "From today," he said, "I will make all final decisions. No more secrets behind my back. No more speaking for me. I am the king." The room was quiet. No one moved. Lu Bue looked surprised, but the boy did not look away. From that day, things began to change, slowly, quietly. Qin Shi Huang started to take back power, not with shouting, not with force, but with a clear mind and a strong will. He was still young, still learning, but now he had taken his first step, and that step would lead him to become the first emperor of China. Even though Qin Shi Huang was king, he was not truly in control. Not yet. Behind him stood a man with great power, Lu Bue, the prime minister. Many people feared him. Many people listened to him more than to the young king. In fact, some said Lu Bue helped bring Qin Shi Huang to the throne in the first place. Some even believed he was more than just a minister, maybe even connected to the king's mother in a secret way. No one dared to speak it aloud. But the boy heard the whispers, and he remembered them. Lu Bue had friends in every corner of the palace. He gave gifts. He made deals. He smiled at the right time and stayed quiet when needed. He controlled the court without raising his voice. To the outside world, Qin was strong. But inside the walls of the palace, power was split. The young king knew this, and he didn't forget. At first, Qin Shi Huang said nothing. He watched how Lu Bue moved. He listened to what he said, and more importantly, what he didn't say. He began to understand how power worked. It was not just about shouting orders. It was about knowing who to trust and who to fear. One day, Qin Shi Huang overheard a conversation between two men in the garden. They spoke about Lu Bue, how he placed spies in the palace, how he controlled money, soldiers, even the letters that reached the king. That night, the boy could not sleep. He sat at his table, the candlelight dancing on the walls. He wrote something small on a piece of paper. "I am king, but I am not free." He knew he had to wait. He was still too young, and Lu Bue still too strong. But the fire had started to burn. Slowly, quietly, Qin Shi Huang began to change the people around him. He asked new men to serve him. He gave small tasks to those he trusted. He began to learn the names of guards, farmers, teachers. He wanted to build his own world, one where no shadow could rule behind the throne. One evening, he sat in the great hall, looking at the tall chair where his father once ruled. Lu Bue entered the room. He bowed, as always. But this time, Qin Shi Huang did not smile. He simply looked at a man and said, "One day, this kingdom will be mine, not yours." It was not a loud moment. There was no fight, no big scene. But something changed that night. The boy no longer felt small. And Lu Bue, for the first time, felt unsure. The shadow was still there. But now, the light was growing stronger. Qin Shi Huang was no longer a boy. He was now a young man. His eyes were sharper. His voice was stronger. He walked through the palace with quiet steps, but his mind was always working. People began to notice. The servants bowed lower. The soldiers stood straighter. Something was changing. The young king was ready to take control. Lu Bue still held power, but it was not as strong as before. Qin Shi Huang now had his own men, people he trusted, people who followed only him. Slowly, He gave them more work. Slowly, he stopped listening to Lu Buwei. Then one day, he made a big move. There was a man in the court who took money for lies. He gave false reports about the army. Qin Shi Huang heard about it. He said nothing at first. He waited. Then, in front of the full court, he stood up. He looked at the man and said, "You broke trust. You broke the law. You will be punished." The room went silent. No one had seen the young king speak like that before. His words were clear, his face was calm, but his eyes were cold. The man was taken away. No one dared to protect him, not even Lu Buwei. It was a message to everyone. The king is no longer a child. The king is watching, and the king is in charge. After that day, Qin Shi Huang began to clean the palace. He asked hard questions. He changed laws. He sent letters without showing Lu Buwei. He spoke to farmers, soldiers, builders, not just nobles. He wanted to understand his kingdom, not just rule it. For the first time, he truly felt like a king. Still, he didn't move too fast. He knew power could be lost if used without care. So, he waited for the right time. Then one night, he called Lu Buwei to his private room. No guards, no noise, just the two of them. The king said, "You helped me when I was small, but now I stand alone. It is time for you to leave." Lu Buwei looked into his eyes. He saw the truth. He was no longer needed. Lu Buwei left the court a few days later, quietly, without a fight. The shadow behind the throne was gone. Qin Shi Huang stood in his hall, looking out over the city. Fires glowed in the distance. People moved through the streets, and he said to himself, "Now I begin." He had taken back his crown. Now he wanted something bigger. Qin Shi Huang now had full control of his kingdom. But his dream was not small. He did not want just one piece of land. He wanted the whole country, all of China, one flag, one law, one ruler. To do that, he had to fight. 7 kingdoms stood between him and his dream. They were strong. They had armies, walls, gold, and proud kings. But Qin Shi Huang had something different. He had a plan and a heart that never gave up. He met with his generals in a quiet room. On the table was a map of all the kingdoms. His finger touched each one. Zhao, Han Wei Shu, Yan Qi. "One by one," he said, "we will unite them, not just by war, but by fear, by speed, by fire." His generals nodded. They had seen him grow. They believed in him now. The first battles were fast. Qin's army moved like the wind. They used new weapons and smart ideas. They built roads so they could move faster than any other army. They had rules, strict rules, no stealing from villages, no killing the weak. If a soldier broke the rule, he was punished. Some thought the rules were too hard. But Qin Shi Huang believed order was more powerful than swords. One night, before a big battle, he walked through the army camp. The moon was high. Fires burned low. Some soldiers slept. Some sat quietly, looking at the stars. He stopped near one young man, maybe only 16 years old. The boy looked up, surprised. "Your Majesty," he said. Qin Shi Huang smiled a little. "Are you afraid?" he asked. The boy nodded. "Yes," the king said softly. "So am I." Because deep down, Qin Shi Huang was still human, still a man with fear, like everyone else. But he hid it well, because he knew if he showed fear, others might lose hope. The next day, the battle came. It was loud, it was fast, and Qin's army won. More battles followed. More land came under his name. Some kingdoms gave up quickly. Some fought hard. But none could stop him. People began to talk. "He is not just a king," they said. He is a storm. And Qin Shi Huang, riding through the gates of each new city, did not smile. He did not shout. He just looked forward. Always forward. The dream was not done yet, but now it was real. The kingdom of Zhao was not like the others. It was strong. Its soldiers were brave. Its walls were tall. It had fought many wars and had never fallen. When Qin Shi Huang looked at the map, he knew Zhao would be the hardest to defeat. But he also knew without Zhao, there could be no united China. The war against Zhao began in winter. Snow fell on the roads. The wind was cold. Qin's soldiers wore heavy clothes, but their faces were thin and tired. They marched across rivers and mountains. Step by step, they came closer to Zhao. Inside the capital of Zhao, people were afraid. They had heard the stories. The Qin king is not like others, they said. He moves fast. He does not stop. He takes city after city. Mothers held their children closer. Men stood at the gates, waiting. Qin Shi Huang sent his best general to lead the army. His name was Wang Jian. He was old, but wise. He told the king, "To win, we need not just strength. We need patience." Qin trusted him. So the army waited. They watched. They found weak spots. They learned the land. Then, when the time was right, they attacked. The battle lasted many days. Arrows flew through the air. Walls broke. Soldiers shouted. Zhao fought hard. They were proud. They would not give up easily. But Qin's army kept coming. They did not sleep much. They did not stop. Their faces were dirty. Their hands were cold, but they pushed forward. On the fifth night, Zhao's gate fell. Smoke filled the sky. People ran through the streets. The king of Zhao was captured. And just like that, the strongest enemy was gone. But it did not feel like a victory. After the battle, Qin Shi Huang walked through the city. The air smelled of fire. The houses were broken. He saw a child sitting alone, holding a wooden toy. The child did not cry. He just stared. The king stopped. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he walked away. Because war has no joy, even when you win. That night, he stood alone in his tent. He looked at the map again. One more kingdom was crossed off, but he did not smile. 5 down, he said quietly. 2 to go. The dream was near, but the cost was high. Not every enemy comes with a sword. Some come with a smile. After the fall of Zhao, Qin Shi Huang became more powerful than ever. Many people praised him. Many bowed deeply. But not all of them were honest. Some wanted his power. Some wanted to stop him from inside. At night, the palace was quiet. But inside the quiet, things moved. Words passed from room to room. Lies were told. Secrets were kept. Qin Shi Huang began to feel something strange. He no longer trusted the people near him. Their words were sweet, but their eyes were cold. One day, he learned that a man close to him had shared army plans with another kingdom. That man had smiled at the king just the day before. He had spoken of peace and loyalty, but behind closed doors, he had spoken of war. Qin Shi Huang felt hurt, not because the man lied, but because the lie had lived so close. The man was brought to court. He fell to his knees. "I did it for my family," he said. "I did it out of fear." But the king did not move. His face was stone. "You gave our enemies my soldiers," he said. "You gave them my trust." The punishment was death. After that, Qin Shi Huang changed. He spoke less. He smiled less. He trusted fewer people. Even his guards felt the distance. Even his mother could not come close. He built secret tunnels under the palace. He moved rooms often. No one knew where he slept each night. He wrote his orders by hand. Only a few men could read them. He watched people more closely. He began to believe enemies are everywhere. But he did not stop. He kept moving forward. He said, fear is useful. It keeps the heart awake. One rainy evening, he met with a new general. Do you trust me, my king? The man asked. Qin Shi Huang looked into his eyes and said, I don't need to. I need you to obey. That was the new rule. Not love, not friendship, only order, only control. The war outside was almost over, but the war inside, the one in his mind, was getting louder. Who can a king trust when even silence feels dangerous? Still, his dream was not done. 2 kingdoms remained. The road was dark, but he would walk it alone if he must. In the year 221 BC, something happened that had never happened before. China became one. For hundreds of years, kings had fought, cities had burned, families had moved from place to place. But now, for the first time, one man ruled them all. That man was Qin Shi Huang. The last 2 kingdoms, Yan and Qi, were taken quickly. They saw what happened to the others. They knew they could not win. Some people still tried to fight. Some still hoped. But the dream of the Qin king was too strong. His army moved fast, his plan was clear, and his face showed no doubt. When the final gate opened and the last king fell, Qin Shi Huang did not cheer. He did not cry. He stood still. In his hands, he held a small stone. It was smooth and gray. He had carried it since he was a boy. On it was one word, peace. He looked at the stone. Then he looked at the land. From the rivers in the south to deserts in the north, it was all his. One law, one money, one writing system, one ruler. But he didn't call himself king anymore. That title was too small, too weak. He wanted something greater. So he chose a new name, Huangdi, emperor. And because he was the first, he became Qin Shi Huangdi, the first emperor of Qin. The people watched as new signs were made, new coins were used, new roads were built. He changed the language so everyone could write the same. He made the rules the same in every city. For some, it brought peace. For others, it brought fear. But for Qin Shi Huang, it brought silence. One night, he walked alone through the palace. The walls were high, the floors were cold. He stopped at a window and looked out. Lanterns floated in the dark. The city was quiet. He whispered, I did it. But his voice sounded small. He had everything he wanted. No more kings, no more borders, no more fighting. But still, something was missing. Maybe he thought peace would feel bigger. Maybe he thought power would fill the empty space inside him. It didn't. He was now the most powerful man in the land, but also, maybe, the loneliest. Still, he had more to do. He would build. He would protect. He would try to keep this new China strong, because dreams don't end when they come true. They grow into something else. Even after he became emperor, Qin Shi Huang did not rest. His map was complete, his throne was strong, but his heart was not quiet. He was afraid, not of kings, not of war, but of something harder to see. Fear of the unknown. Fear of what might come next. He had heard stories of people from the north. Strong riders who came without warning took food, burned homes, and disappeared into the mountains. These men had no cities, no walls, and no kings, just horses and arrows. Qin Shi Huang called them barbarians. He did not want them near his land. He wanted to stop them before they could even begin. So he made a decision. Build a wall. Not a wall around a city, but a wall across the whole north, across mountains, rivers, deserts. A wall so long and so strong that no one could pass it. Many kings before him had built small walls, But Qin Shi Huang wanted to connect them, make them one long wall, a wall for one China. He gave the order. Workers came from every part of the country. Farmers, prisoners, soldiers, they all had to help. They carried heavy stones. They worked in the sun and snow. Many of them died. Some never saw their homes again. The wall grew slowly. It twisted like a snake across the land, up high on hills, down low through valleys. Watchtowers were built. Fires were used to send messages across the sky. One old man, a builder, once said to his son, "Why do we build this wall?" The son answered, "To keep the enemy out." The old man looked away and said, "Sometimes I think it also keeps us in." Qin Shi Huang visited the wall many times. He rode on a horse and looked far into the distance. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He just looked. And in his mind, he thought, "I will never let this land break again." But deep down, he knew no wall could stop time. No wall could stop change. Still, he built, because fear, once it starts, is hard to stop. The Great Wall became more than just a wall. It became a symbol of power, of control, of a man who wanted to protect everything, even if it meant losing something inside himself. At night, fires burned on top of the towers. They glowed in the dark, like eyes watching the land. And far below, people whispered stories of the wall. Some said it was too big, too cold, too cruel. But all agreed. It was made by a man who wanted to live forever. Qin Shi Huang had everything: land, gold, soldiers, laws. He ruled from the sea in the east to the desert in the west. But there was one thing he could not control: time. He watched the seasons change. He felt his hair grow gray. His hands, once strong, now shook sometimes. And he began to wonder, how long do I have left? He did not want to die. Not now. Not ever. He had worked too hard. He had seen too much. So he began a new mission. Not war, not roads, but life. Forever life. He asked his doctors, "Can I live forever?" They looked down. No one had an answer. Then one day, a man came to the palace. He wore long robes and spoke in soft words. He called himself a sage. He said, "There is a mountain far away. On this mountain grows a plant. If you drink it, you will never die." The emperor's eyes lit up. He sent ships to the sea. He sent men to far islands. He told them, "Find the secret. Bring me the answer." Some never came back. Some returned with empty hands. Others brought strange herbs, stones, water. None of them worked. Still, the emperor believed. Every night he drank special teas. He took strange pills made of gold, silver, even mercury. The doctors said it was magic, but his body became weak. He had stomach pain. He could not sleep well. And slowly, something inside him began to break. One evening, he looked into a mirror. His face was thinner. His eyes looked tired. He touched the glass and said, "I am still here. I must stay." But his voice was not strong anymore. He started to dream about death. He saw dark rivers, empty fields, silence. He woke up shaking. The guards outside his room heard him cry out. The fear of death was worse than any enemy he had ever faced. To many, he was a god, a leader above all men. But in the end, he was just human, just a man who didn't want to say goodbye. One young servant once asked, "Why are you so afraid, my emperor?" Qin Shi Huang looked at him and said, "Because I built a world I cannot take with me." That was the truth. He had made something big, but he could not hold it forever. Still, he searched. He hoped. He waited. Because maybe, somewhere, there was still a way to win against time. Qin Shi Huang wanted to live forever, but deep inside, he knew he could not. So, he made a new plan. If he could not stop death, then he would control it. He would build a tomb bigger than any before, a place for him to rest, not in silence, but in power. He chose a mountain. He called thousands of workers. They came from all parts of China. For years, they dug deep into the ground. They shaped rooms, tunnels, and secret paths. No one outside the project knew what they were building. It was a secret, a great secret. Inside the tomb, they built a city. There were rivers made of mercury, shining in the dark. There were stars on the ceiling made of jewels. There were doors that locked forever. And standing in lines, silent and still, were thousands of soldiers, not real men, but statues made of clay, each one different, each one wearing armor, each one with a face, a name, a story. They were called the Terracotta Army. One man, a builder, looked at an army and said, "They will guard him, even in death." Another whispered, "This is not a tomb. This is a kingdom under the ground." Qin Shi Huang wanted everything ready. He planned every detail: horses, chariots, musicians, dancers. Everything he loved in life, he wanted in death. But some workers were afraid. They heard stories. T. Hay said that no one who built the tomb would be allowed to leave, that they would be buried too, to keep the secret. No one knows if that story is true. But many never returned home. Years passed. The emperor got older. The tomb got deeper. He visited the site only once. He stood at the edge and looked down into the dark. "I will not sleep," he said. "I will rule from here, too." It was not a place of peace. It was a fortress. Even in death, he wanted power. Even in death, he wanted to be remembered. And he was. Over 2,000 years later, farmers digging a well found something hard in the soil: a head, a soldier, then another, and another. The Terracotta Army stood again, quiet, but alive in stone. People from all over the world came to see them. And each time they looked into those clay eyes, they saw a man who could not let go. A man who built a world underground. A man who wanted forever. Qin Shi Huang had ruled for many years. He had changed China forever. But no wall, no army, no secret drink could stop what was coming. One day, while traveling far from the capital, the emperor became sick. At first, it was small, just pain in the stomach. But each day, it grew worse. He could not eat. He could not sleep. His guards saw the fear in his face. His servants brought more medicine. Nothing helped. He knew. He tried to hide it. He still gave orders. He still walked when he could. But the pain stayed. His body was tired. His mind, once sharp and clear, now felt slow. The man who had feared nothing now feared the end. One night, in a quiet room far from home, Qin Shi Huang lay on a wooden bed. No gold, no silk, just wood and silence. A young guard stood outside the door. Inside, the emperor looked at the ceiling. "I built a wall," he whispered. "I built a kingdom. I built a tomb. But I cannot build a way out of this." And then he was gone. No loud sound, no final speech, just silence. The guards did not tell the people. They were afraid. They worried the kingdom would fall apart without him. So, they kept the news secret. They put his body in a cart with fish, lots of fish, to hide the smell. They brought him home in silence. Along the way, no one was allowed to speak. At night, the roads were dark. No fire, no light. The emperor, who had made the world move with a word, now traveled as a shadow. In the capital, the court cried when they heard. Some cried for real, some cried for show. But all knew. Something big had ended. The man who made China one was now part of the earth. He was buried in the great tomb he had planned. surrounded by walls, surrounded by stone, surrounded by silence. But outside the tomb, life moved on. The wind blew, people worked, children laughed, and the name Qin Shi Huang became more than just a name. It became a story. After Qin Shi Huang died, the empire was quiet, but only for a short time. The silence did not last. Without the emperor, everything began to change. His son took the throne, but he was not like his father. He was not strong. He did not have the same mind, the same will. The people around him wanted power. They lied. They fought. They made plans for themselves. The system that Qin Shi Huang built was too heavy, too hard, too strict. People had followed him out of fear. But now the fear was gone. The farmers grew angry. The workers stopped working. Soldiers began to turn away. In the villages, people started to talk again. The emperor is dead, they whispered. Why must we still follow these rules? Some threw away the heavy laws. Others picked up weapons. And then it began. Small groups rose up. At first they fought in forests and hills, then in towns, then in cities. The empire, so strong just months before, began to break apart, piece by piece. The roads that once brought soldiers now brought rebels. The same walls that once kept enemies out now kept people locked inside. The empire was falling, and fast. One old man in the capital said, "When the head is gone, the body cannot stand." He was right. The son of Qin Shi Huang could not stop the fall. He did not know how. He was afraid. He asked his men, "What would my father do?" But no one could answer because his father was not there. In less than 4 years, the Great Qin Dynasty ended. The first empire of China, built with fire, blood, stone, and silence, was gone. People burned the emperor's books. They broke his statues. They said, "Let us forget him." But some could not forget. A traveler walked past the ruins of a wall. He stopped. He touched the stone. He whispered he wanted peace. But he built fear. Maybe that was true. Or maybe he just tried to do something too big, too fast, with too much control. And when control left, everything else left with it. Qin Shi Huang is gone. His body is deep under the earth. His empire fell long ago. His tomb is silent. But his name still lives. Today, when people say China, they speak a name that comes from him, Qin. He was the first to make the idea of one China real. One land, one law, one writing, one dream. Some people remember him as a hard ruler. Others call him a great leader. Maybe he was both. He built roads that still guide travelers. He started a wall that still stands against the sky. And under the ground, his army of clay still waits, quiet but proud. In schools, students learn his story. In museums, people look at his world. And in the hearts of many, there is one small question. If a boy of 13 could dream so big, what can I do? Maybe you are learning English. Maybe it feels hard, slow, lonely. But remember, Qin Shi Huang, he did not start strong. He did not know all the answers. He just believed in a dream, and he moved step by step until the world changed around him. You can do that too. So don't stop. Keep going.